Good morning, afternoon, evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm George Moss again here on New Year's Eve at AllpointsTV.com. And also, as of Saturday of this week, we'll be at WFOV 92.1. And we're very glad to be partnering with that studio, one of the outstanding studios in the city of Flint. We are very privileged to be with them on Saturdays at 12 o'clock in the afternoon. And we do that program, a repeat of this program on Saturdays at 12. We are delighted, as always, to have you with us, and we hope you'll stay tuned for the next hour. You know, we try to bring some different perspectives to current events, and I guarantee you today we will be bringing you a different perspective. We might have to hightail it out of the city after this program is over, because I want to say something before I go off the air about Obama, because I want to pull the cover off of this hoodlum. And John, I'm gonna use the Bible as a historical reference. I didn't say I'm going to use the Bible as history. I'm going to use the Bible as a historical reference point to undress Barack Obama, but I need to do that in the middle part of the program, because if I do it now, everybody be tuning me off.
Do you need a copy of it? By the way, I got a Bible here. You need it?
I don't need a copy of it, John. I knew exactly where we're going with this one. But, you know, we just got to get some truth on the table in this country. And we don't have a lot of truth in this country anymore because of political correctness. And there are some things that you are not supposed to say, and there are some things you better not say. But I'm bold enough and determined enough, and I guess in a way not caring what people say enough to say it anyway. And nobody's gonna put a muzzle on my mouth, and that includes you, Facebook. Who, John? They just on Facebook. They just took down Franklin Graham.
Yeah, because he talks against homosexuality or something like that. I think that's what it was.
You can't be in a safer voice out there than Franklin Graham. Is he going to try to throw the government?
Oh, see, it's what it is. I mean, do you know what, though? We just definitely got to exit Facebook. I mean, everybody who is, I mean, it's not even, I'm all over the place. I mean, there's some views of some people, I know I'm a libertarian because I get accused in the same day of being a leftist by the right-wingers, and I get accused of being a right-winger by the left-wingers. So, yeah. I mean, there's like, I just believe that, I believe that people have a right to choose or who they associate with. And if you have biblical principles, or if you have, I don't understand why they want to throw away the biblical principles but embrace the Quranic principles, which I find to be far more intolerant and never tested in modern day setting.
Yeah, tell me about it.
So I don't understand why I'm supposed to forego. Yeah, let's face it. I know people who say they don't like about gays or something like that, who go to church, but they never advocated killing them. The Quran and the people following the Quran do that. Yeah. So I don't understand why I'm supposed to, you know, throw. I mean, they're tolerant. They're so tolerant. They're willing. I don't see how they think they can encompass everybody together. All together, the gays and the people who are, you know, militant Quranic following Muslims. I don't know how they can embrace and fold those all into the same fold. I don't know how that's possible.
John, the left is not tolerant. The left is fascist, and I don't know why people have a problem with people, you know, saying that, because the liberal mind. This is the title of. I brought this book just to reinforce that premise. I keep talking about this book. It's written by Lyle Roster, who is a medical doctor, and he wrote a book called The Liberal Mind, The Psychological Causes of Political Madness. And it goes along with a more recent book put out by Burgess Owens. You may have read this book. It's not quite as difficult to read as Ross's book. It's more of a populist written book by Burgess Owens called Liberalism, How to Turn Good Men into Whiners, Wieners, and Wimps. And that's everybody on the left. But John, everybody on the left, if they're not wieners and wimps, which they are, then they're whining about something. And so Burgess Owens' book, if you don't want to read the book called The Liberal Mind by Rossiter, The Psychological Causes of Political Madness, because of the difficulty of some of the concepts in the book, you can read the same precept in the book written by Burgess Owens. Owens the former football player, the man that came off the football field and obviously didn't play football with his helmet off like Gerald Ford did. John, so he came off the football field with his physical endowment intact, and also his mental endowments were still intact. We can't say that for all of them.
Did you ever see that meme on Facebook about in the year that the hockey teams actually adopted the use of the athletic cup, and then like 15, 20 years later they started wearing helmets. So the priorities are
too late.
The priorities are kind of messed up. But I can understand it. But
there's a whole lot of them, and a lot of those football players with the helmets on are showing their disassociation from being mentally incapacitated. They're down there $2.4 million on the average salary a year, and they're down there protesting lack of opportunity. Give me a break. Give me that lack of opportunity where I'm making an average, and that's not the top of the scale now. That's like, like the quarterbacks, and more of the quarterbacks are now black quarterbacks. Couldn't play that position some years in the past, but now look at how you got to have. Look at those quarterbacks going to be in the final game coming up when Alabama plays for the championship, and they're going to be playing against the number 2 team, because number 3 and 4 y'all didn't do it. 3 and 4 you didn't. That wasn't it. So they blew out. Clemson blew out the number 3 team, Notre Dame, beat them 30-3, and Alabama walked all over. I mean, they couldn't stop anybody that first quarter. By the time Alabama, once the other team scored, Alabama had already scored 3 touchdowns, and the first 3 possessions, they went right into the end zone. And one guy was standing there on the 4th touchdown, and the guy had such a steam of speed to go toward the end zone, was not going to be denied, and he just simply ran right through him. I don't know what that guy was doing out there. He might as well have been on the sideline. Just ran right over him. And so the Heisman Trophy winner never had a chance really to get his team in the game. And by the time they got on track, Alabama had the game already out of commission. But look at those quarterbacks now in the final game, and who's back there. That's opportunity. You can get off your knees on that one, because the quarterback for Alabama, Tour, who is that back there? And look at the other side where you have the quarterback for Clemson. They're not denying anyone. Look in the backfield. Look at those guys who are making those acrobatic catches on the sideline, where they got their toes inbound, the balls are overthrown. They got to come down with a ball that's out of their reach. You got to come down not only with the ball, but stay inbound with one of their feet. Based upon the rules, they got to have 1 foot inbound, and they're able to do that. So why are they out there? They're out there because if they're not out there, the team that doesn't have them out there is going to lose the game. What got them out there on the football field to the point where they are 70% of the football players in the NFL? What got them out there is their talent. And no matter what the opportunity was, the talent is going to overwhelm anyone to want to keep them off the field, because the other team didn't do it. And so if the other team doesn't keep them off the field, by you keep them off the field, you at a disadvantage. So all that stuff they're doing out there in terms of kneeling when they play the national anthem, all that is people that are mentally incapacitated. Because you cannot tell me about the lack of opportunity based upon the football players, and therefore, if you want to tell me about the lack of opportunity for others, let them speak to that. Because you cannot speak to their lack of opportunity because you're not walking in their shoes. Tell me about your lack of opportunity. Why are you kneeling out there giving your incapacitation? Shut up. That's what I'm saying. So that's politically correct. And it gets worse than that later on in the program when I unclothe and bring to nakedness this fraud, Barack Obama. And I'm going to show he's a fraud by pointing out what everybody else is missing. Because I'm here to clean it up. That's what I'm here for. And that's cleaning up behind all of these political pundits, even some of the ones that have it right to some extent, but do not have the full understanding of it, as I do. You can believe that. You don't have to believe it. I'm going to demonstrate it. Let me read something here by one of the persons that have a lot of it correct. I want to start off with this as our beginning point. But I want to go to a lot of different things during this discussion, because there's a lot of things got to be said here on the closing day of 2018. And maybe I'll be able to touch upon, if I have enough time, some of my greatest hits during the year that we ring in out and ring in the new year. Maybe I can go to some of my greatest hits this year. But we'll see how that goes too. Let me start off with reading again page 263 of the book written by a man that I agree with on many of the claims he makes. I said last week that a lot of the claims is being made by this author of the book called "It is Dangerous to Be Right When the Government is Wrong," which he took that premise from Voltaire. The case for personal freedom. Now, I like a lot of what Napolitano says in his book, but you know, Napolitano, you're getting on my nerve with your nonsense that I see you talking on Fox, and it's just really embarrassing some of the things that are coming out of your mouth. And I don't know if you played in the football with your helmet on. I don't know if you played in the football, first of all, or if you played without your helmet on. But, and if you did play, did you have your helmet on? But some of the things you're saying on Fox, like the president is subject to, is running ahead of indictment. Look, hey folks, you cannot have Mueller. Anybody out there realize that Mueller was not elected to a position by the American people, and that Obama is not president? Do you understand that? Do you also understand that 63 million people went to the polls November the 8th and voted for Donald J. Trump to be president of the United States? And you cannot have a person appointed by one of the persons in the executive branch of government, this criminal named Rod Rosenstein, who is an outright criminal, who knows that if he does not, in fact, rein Mueller in, then he's out there to be investigated. And that's why they're not going to rein Mueller in, and why Mueller's not made a report yet. You know why? Because there's no there. And that's not just out of my mouth. That's also out of the mouth of one of the criminals named Peter Strzok that was inside of the FBI, and his girlfriend. You know, and then they're talking about, can we stop Donald Trump? And he says in there, have you seen this on any of the network news programs? Have they revealed that in that communication between Page and Peter Strzok, the lovers inside the FBI, has anyone said that part of that which the press has not reported is that when she said, are you going forward with this pulling the coattail on Donald Trump? Anybody reported that he said that will not be possible to stop him at the pass because there's no there? Anybody reported that? Is that on CNN? Is that on MSNBC? Is that on Fox? There's no there. And that's why Mueller has not made his report, because there is no there. And once you tell the American people there's no there, and you spent 18 to 30 billion, let me get the numbers right, 18 to 30 million dollars of taxpayers' money, and you've been investigating this thing for 2 years, and there's no there, and you knew it ahead of time, and you continue to spend taxpayers' money running after a false claim that you know to be false, then the spotlight necessarily turns upon you. And they're not willing to stop that, because that's what happened at the end of this probe. Another probe begins. I'm telling you the absolute truth here. And I have to say this also, and I don't care who doesn't like it. The name is Moss. I paid. Let me make a rhyme. The name is Moss, and I paid to be the boss. I'm the boss of my mouth. And so I'm not politically correct. And you wait till I get to this hustler named Barack Obama, because you haven't heard anything yet. I'm coming to him. Not immediately, but before I get off the air, I'm gonna write that down so I won't forget it.
You're gonna sound like Reverend Manning there. We've got to call him Mac Daddy.
Not Manning, by the way. Have you seen the latest tape on Manning?
No.
Oh yeah, I got to see it, John.
No, I lost contact after basically. I just listened to him because I mean he used to call Obama the Mac Daddy or something.
Yeah, Mac Daddy. Well,
I don't know what that means.
Yeah, actually, I know what it means, but
I don't know.
I'm not coming from that angle of him being the long-legged Mac Daddy. I'm not coming from that position. I'm coming from the position a little bit different, and I'm going to make a biblical reference here, use the Bible as a historical reference, but not teaching anything about the history of the Bible as history. See, that's a distinction I want to make also. Not the Bible as history, but as a historical reference point is what I'll be making that. And John, the reason why I make that distinction is because people misunderstood me in another genre when I was teaching these historians out here. When I when I said in one of my posts, this is before they banned me on Facebook, you better ban me, and you better keep me banned, because I'm not going to stop talking just because you got me out there censored. Talking about, wanted me to send a picture to show that I wrote what I wrote. I wrote it, and you act like I didn't write it because a black man is supposed to be saying that. That's what you really were saying, that you couldn't believe a black man was saying that. And so therefore they wanted me to send a picture. My picture's on the post, you crazy fools. You know, give me a break. So, anyway, my reference later on to Obama reminds me of what I said when I was talking about the Civil War, the so-called Civil War. First of all, we have not fought a civil war in this country. And when I was saying that every battle that was fought to end the secession of the South was fought in the South, some hick-in-the head came out to tell me about Gettysburg, as if I didn't in the 8th grade have to learn the Gettysburg Address. 7 years ago, our fathers brought forth for this country a new nation, conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. And all the rest of that 5-minute speech given by Abraham Lincoln on July the 3rd, November the 19th, 1863. But the Gettysburg battles were fought for 3 days, July 1st to July 3rd, in Pennsylvania. So they're going to tell me when I told them that every battle that was fought to end the secession of the South was fought in the South, some nut want to tell me about the fighting that went on in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. Let me tell you nut something. You tell me how you end the secession of the South by fighting in the North. Your confusion is that you see this as a civil war, and I don't, because it was not a civil war. This is a war of Southern secession. And the only way you're going to end the war of Southern secession is to go down into the South with an invasion of the Northern Army, to go into the South and destroy it there. That's why Tecumseh was saying that he is going to make Atlanta. I can't remember if he said Atlanta or Georgia, but it's one of the two. But I think he said Atlanta. He's going to make, he might have said Georgia now, but I know he said he's going to make them howl. We're going to make Georgia howl, or maybe make Atlanta howl. And what he meant by that is that they're going to go in there as the terrorists that they were, and they're going to destroy everything in their path, because they realized that they cannot get the South to put down its weapons by fighting them on the military battlefield, because they were getting their so-and-so kicked on the battlefield. And the South was fighting for their homeland. You talking about homeland security? They're fighting for their homeland, and they are not going to back down, because the North is in the South fighting on the homeland of those persons defending their families against these northern invaders. They came into the South to end their secession movement. No different than what happened at the founding of this country when they came in there to fight against George Washington and others, Thomas Jefferson, you name the ones that were there, Patrick Henry, Benjamin Rush, you name those persons that signed the Declaration of Independence, or their own Emancipation Proclamation, where they are emancipating themselves through their proclamation that we call it the Declaration of Independence, and they were declaring their independence from King George III. Well, they got King George III sitting on the throne as the 16th President of the United States. And they're fighting him in the same tone as they were fighting with George Washington at the time of the Revolutionary War in 1776. It's no different. The issues are the same. And the actual issue at that time is not different from the time here. At the point of independence, they left with their slaves intact. And at the point of the independence of the secession movement in the South, they left with their slaves intact. And that was a mistake that they made in terms of how history sees that war. If they had, what they should have done, in order to make it clear what this war was really about, what they should have done was declare their slaves free and then engage the northern invaders. But they did not do that, and therefore people are not clear about what this war is really about. I'm right and they're wrong. If this war is over slavery, and I've said this many times before, if this war was over slavery, then why is it that after the war came to a close with the Emancipation Proclamation being issued on January 1, 1863, why is there in the aftermath of this war that ended on the 12th of April at the Appomattox building in Virginia, the courthouse in Virginia, why is it when that war was won, why is there slavery still going on in this country? If the Emancipation Proclamation ended slavery once it could be enforced by being applied in those states that were in rebelling against the Union, why is slavery still in this country? It needed an amendment to bring about the end of it.
The Emancipation Proclamation, I think Rush Limbaugh would, if you back years ago, he'd always had this term called, you know, just there was no significance to it, just a protest or something like that, you know, and that's what it was. It was basically just one of those token gestures, basically. That's what it was.
Yeah, let me say what it was in particular terms. It was a military document. It is a document that Lincoln could issue under his second article rights, his powers under the second article of the Constitution to be the commander-in-chief. And he therefore, given the fact that he's commander-in-chief of the military, he can then issue the Emancipation Proclamation as a military document. He does not have the authority, and this is to Lincoln's credit, although I don't give him the credit everybody else gives him, because I think, quite frankly, and this is another point of political incorrectness, I think Abraham Lincoln should have been brought up upon war crimes. Take that to the bank. Yeah, that's true also. I'm right. And all of the historians that are writing about Lincoln, I'm writing they're wrong. There was a way to end slavery in this country, but creating a war in which there are 600,000 people, the equivalent of 5 million people dead on the battlefield, is not the way to go. To have Americans killing Americans, and you have him as the greatest president this country has produced, you got to be kidding me. John, I can't hardly get you out of the hell right now. But I'm going to get back to my subject. I mean, that's not even my subject. But that's tangentially what we need to talk about here. But okay, let me get to my subject, because that ain't it. I was going to read something from Napolitano's book. This is really my subject. I gotta stay, you know, focused. Because if I don't stay focused, I'll be bringing all these points here, and I never get around to finishing up what I came to talk about today at the studio. Here's what I came to talk about. Let me get my glasses here so I can see what's on this page. On page 263, let me read one part on Napolitano. Napolitano, who's becoming increasingly a nutcase. The president cannot be indicted. You're going to have a person that is appointed by a person underneath the president. Rosenstein is not even the attorney general. Okay, we got to take a break. We got to take a break here. And this break will go on for 4 minutes. We will see you hopefully on the other side of this rant. WFOV. Okay, those of you who are staying with us at AllpointsTV.com, we're going to continue our rant. And we're going to continue to be correct, although not that modifier in terms of the modifier of the word correct. We're not politically correct. We're correct in terms of the information. And I'm going to say it again because y'all didn't hear me. I'm right, and all of the pundits out there who disagree, they're wrong. And Napolitano, you're right on what I'm going to read here. I'm going to read the part in which you're right. On page 263, you said this. Let me get to the point that I want to make here. I mean, I agree with you when you say government rejects its moral and legal obligations. You know, I don't claim that government has a moral obligation. I don't want to bring morality into it because politics is not moral. Politics is immoral. I want to raise a legal objection. And the legal objection is if these clowns in government are following that which is mandated in the Constitution. Don't talk to me about morality. That's what they raised with Thomas Jefferson when they told him, let's try to find the right person to be the person running this country. And Jefferson's answer was, do not tell me about the morality of being. If we were if men were angels, we would not need a constitution or government. And if government was in fact moral, we would not need law. We would not need restrictions on government power. This is in essence what he said. So this idea that when he says government rejects its moral and legal obligations, government doesn't have a moral obligation; it has a legal obligation. And its legal obligation is that government follows the law. If there's a moral obligation, that's Christianity, isn't it, or some other religious discourse, and they're carrying out a mandate that's based upon religious premises, which they claim there's a separation between that and the government. Or you got mad when, look at the other thing aside of it, how you got mad with the president when he stood there resolute when they were talking about the Apostles' Creed and the president didn't take part in it. You got to choose which one you want now. You can't have both.
You know, that's interesting. I didn't even think of that because, I mean, they're chastising him for not repeating this, but then if he had, they're saying, you violated this, separation of church and state. But of course, everybody else did, too, all the other people present.
Because the Muslims don't claim that, John. If you're going to be the president of all the people, how you up there taking the Apostles' Creed, if you believe in it, right? Because what about the Muslims? What about the person that do not believe in the Apostles' Creed, like the atheists, for example, the non-religionists? You got to represent them also. So the president doesn't take part in it. And now the president is not participating in it. And look at how he disrespected the evangelicals that have voted for him. Look at this president. Can I ask you to do something for me if you don't mind? Shut up. This is the kind of stuff that we're dealing with in this country. You know why? Because the country is insane. The country has gone mad. Political correctness, all of those practicing political correctness, they're absolutely insane. All right, back to Napolitano. Back to the book, back to the bricks. Government rejects its moral and legal obligations. It is legal obligations, not moral obligations. He won't even do that. It breaks its own laws. That's what I'm concerned about. I'm concerned about the government breaking its own laws.
Welcome back to the FOV.
Okay, I thought I heard the interlude back into the program.
Yeah.
Thank you, John.
Yeah.
John is always on the, he's on the clock. I wear a watch, but I'm never on the clock because I'm always late. But John keeps us focused here. Not only does it reject its legal obligations, that's what I'm concerned about, its legal obligations, but it breaks its own laws. That's what I'm concerned about. The government breaks its own laws. Those gangsters make laws, right? How many of those laws that they make for us do they follow? Try to get to the number one in terms of the law. They're lawbreakers. They make the laws and then they violate the laws. Breaks its own laws. He didn't say break some of them, breaks its own laws. Therefore, it makes up its own rules. And that hustler down there named Alcee Hastings in Florida came out and said that the rules are, the law is what we say it is. And he's still being elected over and over again down there in Florida by people who are politically correct, but are not correct in terms of without it being political. Here's the part I want to talk about. Declares worthless paper to be money. That's the part in Napolitano where you knocked it out of the park. And that's the danger that we're in right now. Because these people in power were handed off, meaning that the generation that preceded them, generations, plural, that preceded them, handed off a bogus political structure and a bogus economic structure that was not intended by the framers. This is not the government the framers had created for posterity. This is a bogus government in place. And it became bogus. There were attempts to make it a bogus government over time by many people who were invested with power through the political process. That's why I keep saying that America elects its dictators. Not that there are any less dictators than the others, it's just more disguised because they are elected. And they have to appeal every so often for the electorate to put them back in there. For the criminals that they are, they know if they become unmasked, the criminality would be exposed, and therefore they have to continue to mask themselves, but they're no less criminal than they are elsewhere. And when I go on radio, because they don't want me on there too much, but when I go on radio and say what I said, that, and I like these people I'm on with, by the way, I do have a lot of respect for them. Not that guest they had on that last time I was on radio, who was a fathead. I mean, give me I know they listen to this program. Yeah, give me a break, please. At least for 5 minutes on these programs with these people that want to try to teach me something. You know what? I can't get more offended by somebody trying to teach me something, and they're not qualified to tie my shoes. None of them. Let me tell y'all something. Y'all, not you all, y'all. Let me tell y'all something. You don't have anything to teach me. And that goes for all you professors also. You're wasting your time. Man and woman. You don't have anything to teach me. You think you do. Look, all this stuff that y'all saying is because you're parrots. And one parrot says it, then all the choir repeats it. Like, for example, and I'm going to get back to my subject, but like, for example, I was on this program, and this one person was telling me about global warming. That's the conversation I had with my wife last night. My wife I was telling my wife about this nonsense. She listened to this program on climate, some program they had on it must have been the History Channel or something. And I was telling my wife to go back to read your novels and all that because she likes fiction. I was telling my wife to go back and read her fiction. So she just could not take my particular word on this madness they have out here, where these people that are insane are talking about mankind by carbon dioxide is bringing about global warming. So, and if the globe continues to warm, you're going to have the ice at the Arctic is going to melt, and it's going to raise the sea level by melting into the sea. So you know, what I did. I didn't say anything else to my wife about it because I had to demonstrate the falsity of the claim. So what I did, I didn't tell her what I was doing. I went to the kitchen, and I went into the ice tray. We got one of those ice dispensers. I went in the ice tray and put 5 cubes of ice into a glass, and they filled the rest of it up with water. And I took it in the bathroom, put it in the bathroom. So when she got up the next morning, she'd see the water, because it would have melted overnight. You know what my wife did? My wife got up. She didn't know why that water was in the bathroom, but she knew that glass out of place. So she went in there in the bathroom this morning and took the glass, not knowing why it was in there, but knowing it was out of place being in the bathroom, and went and poured the water out. So I asked her, I said, "Did you pour that water out?" She said, "Yes." I said, "The reason why I had that water in there is I was going to demonstrate the point I was trying to make to you yesterday, which is that when ice melts, it does not increase the volume of the water. Just because the ice is in a solid form rather than liquid form, it does not change the molecular makeup of the water. It's still H2. It's still H2O. It still has 2 atoms of hydrogen bonded with 1 atom made up of 16. If you go look at the electron chart, made up of 16. You know, it's 8 and 8. It bonds with 16 protons and electrons in the atom. So it has 1 atom of oxygen and 2 atoms of hydrogen. It does not change the molecular content of the water just because it no longer exists in liquid form. In other words, the ice is a solid form of the liquid. So if you add they don't have no respect for us. So if you change the solid form of the water or the ice at the Arctic, and you change it to the liquid form in the Arctic, it doesn't raise the volume of the water. Al Gore, you crazy fool. Excuse me for using the word fool on radio. Al Gore got I looked at his record, not as the record reported. He got a D in the climatology class he took under this guy. I forget his name right now, but he got a D in the course, and he thought the guy was the guy who first of all wanted to study nuclear bombs, the impact of nuclear energy upon the climate. Once that was over, he then went to, let's look at pollution, what pollution has upon the climate. He never concluded that it has anything to do with the globe warming or cooling. He just raised a conjectural claim. Let's study it. Al Gore runs out of the class, got a D in the man's class, and runs out with the claim that it causes global warming. Here is a non-pollutant gas. Carbon dioxide is a non-pollutant. And they're going to say that is raising the temperature of the earth. And yet we see it demonstrated every day, and sometimes in the course of the same day, where the sun, by its presence, it warms the globe, and by its absence, it cools the globe by being absent. And we saw it just here in Flint. We had the sun out. I went out there to get the mail. I didn't wear a coat. The sun was out. Later on that night, I got my coat on. You know why? Because it got cold in the evening. The sun went down, no sun out there, cold. And they see it demonstrated every day, and they let people convince them of their lying eyes. They're lying. And when you start talking to me on these programs, you listen carefully. When you start talking to me about the 97%, the consensus, first of all, let me tell you this. There is no 97% consensus. I looked at the chart. I'm right again, and they're wrong. There's no 97% consensus. But if you say there's consensus, let me deal with that as an aspect. You're not talking about 97% of the consensus on the science, you talk about 97% consensus on the politics. Do you crazy, excuse me, don't want to use that word again. Do you understand the difference between a consensus on the politics and a consensus on the science? Do you understand the difference between those two? Did you read about when they had a hacking into the conversation between the scientists about what they were saying in Sussex, England? And they hacked into it where the scientists were talking among themselves out of the earshot of the layman, and they were saying that they knew they were lying. So let's talk about the consensus. Not a consensus on the science, because the scientists were admitting inside of the scientific community that they were lying. So the consensus is not on the science. The consensus is on the politics. Okay, I'm right again, they're wrong. And I want to keep coming back to that, because just because you don't agree does not mean that because there's consensus on the disagreement, that which they disagree about is right on their disagreement, and therefore what they're disagreeing about, that particular premise, is wrong. I'm not wrong, they're wrong. Okay, I want to come back to this thing about the money that Napolitano was raising, because that's where I want to go, at least with part of this. But I want to end on this hustler named Barack Obama. John, make sure that I got at least 5 minutes left for that. I don't want to leave the program without dealing with that. But in terms of this, the money that Napolitano said on page 263, let me read it again because I've been ranting so much away from it. You may have forgot what Napolitano said, so let me remind you of his statement on 263. Wait, I'm in the wrong book.
I was going to say you got the wrong book.
Yeah, I was going to say, John, I'm going to read from page 263 of The Liberal Mind when I want 263 of Napolitano's book.
By the way, when you're looking for that, I was going to also say I forwarded you an article from FEE, Foundation for Economic Education, about how the left, the political sphere is now misapplying the psychiatric terminologies for people who disagree with their mandates and stuff like that, like the communists did. If you didn't get on board with communists, you're mentally ill, and they were taking care of you, and they're putting you because you needed to be institutionalized for your own good. Yeah. And the left and the right both do this.
Yeah, because the left can't be wrong. You disagree with the left. If you disagree with the liberal mind, the psychological causes of political madness, then they can't be wrong. I had one guy write on my Facebook post before they threw me off Facebook. And one of the guys said, as his argument, he wrote on there, I disagree. And just wrote that as his argument against the premises I was raising in that particular post. And Facebook, you have a moralist comment. You have not converted a person because you silence them. You can see you've not silenced me, and I'm not converted, and I'm not crawling. You can believe that also. They're gonna take me off Facebook, but they took a lot of folks off Facebook. Candace Owens, the Right Reverend Franklin Graham. I mean, how do you take Franklin Graham off there? This guy that had a rant on there, he was really bringing it. What's it, Frederick, I think his name was. He'd be on the post, eating chicken, and you got to go with that, because he's dealing with the stereotype of blacks eating chicken, but also not caring about that, and they had to get him off there. Don't get me started on that. Had to get him off there because you're not supposed to be that politically incorrect. Can't have that. So back to problem number one that I'm solving here. They declare worthless paper to be money, and then on top of that, Napolitano says, devalues even that. These gangsters, that's who they are. They are gangsters in Washington. They are, if you go to Ayn Rand's book, particularly if you go read in her book, novel in 1957. That's one of the two novels well, not the only two. I read some other novels too, but those two that I most that's the novel Atlas Shrugged is one of I would recommend that to be read because there's a lot of philosophy in Ayn Rand's rant. In fact, that book is full of rants, and I don't think Ayn Rand had recognized that she was in fact carrying a philosophy until people read the book and said, "Look, there's a philosophy in back of this." And I think that's when she really found objectivism and began to really, fine tune what she had come up with, because that was like an afterthought of the objectivist philosophy that she came up with. But in Atlas Shrugged, it's very clear there's a philosophy back of what she was writing. And so in 1957, when Atlas Shrugged came out, but Ayn Rand calls these politicians the other side of what I'm calling them. She called them Attila. And that's who they are. They are without exception. All of them are. And they can camouflage it all they want. They can disguise it all they want, and they do disguise it. But they have the nerve to do that in terms of how they disguise it. They call themselves Democrats and Republicans. You got to be insulting the intelligence of everybody on the planet. It's just like the Chinese call themselves the People's Republic of China. Okay, let the people decide that Chairman Xi is no longer the chairman, and they're going to rise up and vote him. Let the People's Republic of North Korea decide that who is now the premier of North Korea, let them decide that they don't any longer want him in that position. And since it's the People's Republic of North Korea, let the people say no, they no longer want him in charge, and then see what happens. And I tell you what's going to happen, because it's already written clearly in history. What's going to happen is they're going to bring out their guns. And you don't have to see the gun necessarily to know that they're there. Just know what George Washington said. Government is not reason, is not rational. Government is force. And when you understand that, whether they show you the force or not, that's who Attila speaks from. And you hear Attila, if you can hear Attila's voice, you hear it when they say things like, for example, you can keep your insurance, you can keep your doctor, blah, blah, blah. That's Attila speaking. Because what Attila is saying is the same thing that they used to say in my classroom. I say, turn around, they say, okay. They didn't know I was speaking in Attila's voice with force. When I say turn around, I wasn't asking them to turn around, I was telling them to turn around. And when they say okay, I said, I don't care if it's okay. If they said all right, I don't care if it's all right. If they went back to okay, I said get out. Because that was not a request. There's force in back of it. And that's the force that I used. You know what the force was? My voice was backed up by the state of Michigan. And that's what they were writing about in the Flint Journal when they came and played basketball against a school, and they went in the gym and they went back to write articles to the Flint Journal from Flushing, from other schools, Grand Blanc, you name it. They were saying we could not believe it because they went in there, they thought they were in church. That's a fact. Because I wasn't buying that I wasn't in charge. I was in charge through the power of the state. And I understood that because the state is force.
Okay, you got 50 minutes right now. I have 50 minutes.
50 minutes, okay.
You said you want some time for
I do. I want to tell you this, folks. The government cannot be less than a gangster government. Because the money, first of all, the money, that's what Napolitano was making reference to. I agree with him on this point on page 263. The money, listen to this part here, where he says, they not only disobey the orders and violate constitutional guarantees, but he says here, they, where's that part about the money again? The government, they simply cannot, oh yeah. Even many, I got to find the part about the money. States are, I'm in the wrong paragraph, that's why I couldn't find it. Government rejects its moral and legal obligations. Now, down to the point where he talks about the money, it says that it declares worthless paper to be money. That's how, and then it violates that. It even devalues that. Well, let me say something about Napolitano's point. There is no money. There's only debt, and the government has to continue to create debt. For example, through the student loans, for example. It has to have debt. Once you stop expanding the debt, and I'll go into this a lot more next week when I have more time, because I want to finish up with this hustler named Barack Hussein Obama. But there's no money in the system. There's only debt in the system. And because there's debt, once you stop expanding the debt, then the system, because to end the debt, you have to replace the debt with other currency. I wrote it down in my notes in terms of how that works, and I don't know if I have enough time to get to it. I'll get to it next week as I go into why there is no money. The Napolitano is right about that. There's no money in the system. There's only debt. I'm going to show you how they create quote unquote money in the system next week. But there is no money in the system. There's only debt in the system. And if you in fact pay off the debt, because the debt is the currency supply, to destroy the debt is destroy the currency supply. Therefore, it's necessary to create other debt, because you need to have other currency created into existence to take its place. I'll explain that in more detail next week. But that's the falsity of on which the whole government is situated right now. It cannot be corrected. The collapse of the American system is already built in, and it will collapse on its own weight. And I'll tell you the problem that I have right now as an investor in this economy. I'll tell you the problem that I got, and I'll show you that next week as well. Right now, I want to end up on this hustler, Barack Obama. Everyone was wrong in terms of saying that Obama was ineligible to run for president because he was not born in the country. But Barack Obama was born in the country. He was born in Hawaii. You cannot falsify those documents back to that time period. There are some other falsities involved in it, but not that. The reason why Obama was ineligible to be president of the United States is because the requirement to be president is that you must be a natural-born citizen of the United States. To be a natural-born citizen of the United States, because the framers were fearful of treason in the highest office in the land, it required something different in the president than it required for all the other federal office holders. It does not require that for the members of the House. It doesn't require it for the Senate. It doesn't require it for the members of the Supreme Court. It singularly requires natural birth citizenship for the president, because he is the only elected official in that branch, or the only official in that branch is nominated, quote unquote. If you nominate a vice president who moves up to the presidency by the 25th Amendment, then he's nominated and then he's confirmed. They wanted to make sure that person would be a natural-born citizen. Therefore, the question comes up, listen to me careful, all of you scholars, because you don't have it. Therefore, any taint in the citizenship is not allowed. It is not allowed to have, for example, in Obama's case, a mother born in America and a father born outside. And I ask you this question right here. Would you be willing to accept Obama's father being born outside of the country if his father was born in Russia or North Korea? What about Iran? If his father was born in Iran and then he was in the same status there as he is in Kenya, would you be willing to tolerate that taint in his citizenship? No. If he was born in a communist country? No. The only reason that you allow that is because of the neutrality of the endangerment of Kenya. But what's the constitutional requirement? How are you a natural-born citizen? Here is the natural-born citizenship. To be a natural-born citizen, there can be no taint in your citizenship. You cannot have a foreign parent. Natural-born does not have anything to do with cesarean section, birth, or any of that. It has to do with the purity of the citizenship of the claimant. And therefore, how much foreign infringement can you have? The answer is 0. No foreign infringement. Natural born means being born to parents, both of whom are citizens of the United States. And they pass their natural born citizenship to their progenitors. Any taint, therefore, is disqualifying. And that's why Obama is disqualified. But that ain't what I want to say about why he is in the Bible. Okay, I gotta wrap it up. Obama is, through the biblical reference, not the Bible's history, but through the biblical reference, Obama is Jacob, who stole the birthright from Esau. Obama stole the birthright from blacks in this country because he, through his mom, could not be a progenitor of the history of blacks in this country because their citizenship, quote unquote, as they claim, comes through his mom. His dad was never an American citizen. Therefore, his dad does not have any role in those cotton fields. And that's what makes him a usurper. And that's my indictment about him. Not that he wasn't born in America, but that he's a usurper of the history of blacks, and he stood in there in the gap, running as president as if he's part of that history. Okay, I gotta get out of here. I'm running too much, we're running too long. But I'm right, and they're wrong. Okay, gotta get out of here. Until next week, I want you to follow your dream, because if you don't follow your dream, you'll never know what's on the other side of the rainbow.